And I remember it was like 110 degrees that day in Phoenix. And when I rolled up the canopy, it actually felt like the cold air was hitting me. And those are the moments you realize just how insanely intense and focused you are. But more importantly than that, the lesson that hit me in that moment changed me for the rest of my life, Nick. And that is go before you're ready. And because I would.
Hey, Nick Nanton here, and thanks for tuning in to Now to Next. I want to make sure you don't miss a single episode of this show on YouTube. So before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You'll have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, just go into your settings and switch on notifications. Thanks for watching. All right, everybody, Nick Nanton here. Welcome back to Now to Next. We've got a great show here for you. I got my good friend, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Rooney here with me. Colonel Dan, how's it going, man?
Oh, I am blessed, Nick. It's good to keep fighting a good fight with you, my friend.
It's good to see your smiling face, man. I'm going to give everybody a way too short bio of some of the things you've done, but we'll get into some of them. You are an F-16 fighter pilot in the Air Force Reserves. You are the founder of the Folds of Honor Foundation, which has awarded over 28,000 scholarships worth approximately $135 million. Your organization is the subject of a documentary that you and I worked on together, which people can watch on Amazon Prime, called Folds of Honor. I know, unique name. And then you're also a pro golfer, a Fox News contributor. You have a new show out on Fox Nation we need to talk about too. The author of A Patriot's Calling, which came out in 2012. And now your new book we're going to talk about today called Fly Into the Wind, How to Harness Faith and Fearlessness on Your Ascent to Greatness. So that is the brief bio. We got lots to talk about. Your early love, professional golf and being a fighter pilot. Tell me about those and share with our audience how those two came together, man.
Yeah, so my first man crush, they'll get that. I was 12 years old, and I met this guy, Steve Courtright, Reno. I mean, and the dude literally walked right out of the right stuff. I mean, just what you think someone like that would look like. And he was 40 years old, and I can't believe I'm going to be 48 next month. But he was the first really cool adult I ever met, and I remember the next day, I'm playing golf with my dad. I'm like, Dad, I know what I want to do with my life. And I want to be a golf pro and a fighter pilot. And his response was very interesting. He asked me a question, right? He's like, son, can you tell me which way an airplane takes off? And I'm like, was it into the wind? He said, yeah, that's exactly right. And he was preparing me for those inevitable headwinds that would stand between this 12-year-old kid and, you know, for whatever it's worth, I'm the only guy in the world that's ever, you know, and still does keep that job description, golf pro and fighter pilot. With these headwinds that would stand between me and those unlikely dreams, and just been such an awesome run to write the ultimate job description, which has evolved a lot since then to include a wife and 5 daughters, and you know the chaos of this thing and beauty of life.
I absolutely love it. So you have these two dreams, and again, I know a lot of this story. Thankfully, I've gotten to spend a lot of time with you, but I'm going to make sure the audience knows it before we dig into the book. So one of the things that you were able to do, so you attended college at University of Kansas, you got a golf scholarship, became one of the top players at the school. You decided that you need to get your pilot's license, which my understanding from my notes here, it was required that you have your pilot's license to get into the Air Force flight school. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's correct. So you have to get your private pilot's license, basically prove you can take off and land and have a little aptitude. You take a much more rigorous grouping of psychological, IQ testing, play video games, all of these things that they try to figure out if you're going to make it through what is the most expensive, highest attrition rate of any program in the U.S. military by far. So they spend about $8 million a piece on you over 2.5 years, and only 4.8% of the people will successfully complete the program to become a fighter pilot. So they invest a lot of dollars up front because they lose a lot of money with people washing out, not making it through the training. But yeah, so got my private pilot's license, and as they say, we took off from there.
So yeah, that's interesting to me just as a interesting fact. Like I would have guessed that you would learn how to be a pilot there. Now, obviously, you learned how to be a very different kind of pilot, but it caught me off guard when I noticed that you had to get your pilot's license and then go to the Air Force Flight School.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a very wide screen, if you will, that they're like, it'll eliminate some people and then they continue to chisel down from there. And there's a thing that we use in the Air Force. So I had the minimum amount of time. I had like 60 hours of flight time, but there are guys that showed up that were, regional airline pilots with a couple thousand hours. And actually, it's negative transfer. The more regular flying experience you have, the worse off you're going to be when you go to be a fighter pilot, because up is down and down is up, and we are not straight and level. And the Air Force and the military, specifically in the fighter business, does things at a very quicker pace, obviously. But the way we do business is much different than the commercial airline world or traditional general aviation pilots.
Got that. And while you're getting your pilot's license, you moved to Florida, which is where I live, and you play the mini tour circuit as a professional golfer. You did the smartest thing I know that you've ever done, because it's the smartest thing I ever did. You got married to Jackie, and I met Jackie, and you married up, my friend. Nice work. And 6 months later, you're accepted in the military's, I didn't know anything about this program, their undergraduate pilot training program. I'm going to cite a stat from the book. A mere 4.8% of pilots in the U.S. Air Force will complete the fighter jet training program, meaning the remaining 95% will default on their dreams. Now, that's like putting a knife to the heart right there. And perhaps even more staggering, listen to this, everybody, is the fact that over a 10-year period, more people will play in the National Football League than will fly a fighter jet. I think that's one of the toughest stats I've ever heard. That's like, there's probably astronaut, and then fighter pilot, and then probably professional athlete, because that's hard. That's really hard. Tell me about that program.
Man, I'm glad I didn't know that walking in, right? It's so often for us, we can become a prisoner of common assumption. When you know that the odds are against you, and man, it'll never work. But that was, the beauty of youth, obviously. But the reckless faith that goes along with it, and the program was incredibly intense, as you might imagine. It's life and death. People die in the program. I mean, this is not a normal job, right? And I go from no flight experience to supersonic in the span of 7 months. You're flying wingtip formations, fingertips, what we call it, but 3 feet separation from aircraft to aircraft. Just a real push it up program. I think that if I was going to tell you one thing, and it kind of ties back to the book, it does. The greatest lesson I learned, there are really 2 life-changing lessons as a fighter pilot that I learned. Number one was, after the first day of training, I went home and I realized, man, the chances of me making it through this deal are slim to none. And I inventoried the class of 45 people, and everybody looked like they were smarter and stronger and everything else than me. And I decided the next day to get up 30 minutes early and pray. And it's something I've never stopped doing. And I'm on eagle's wings by God's grace, and I make it through the program. And I got 3,000 plus fighter hours now under my belt and still flying. But probably the greatest gift that the Air Force ever gave me was this just disciplined prayer routine that I execute every day. And I literally have not, since looking back to the year 2000. Is when I started, and that message is, anything is possible with God in your life. And so that's number one. The second lesson that I learned was actually, you make it through, I get to the F-16 school house, and you go through about a month of simulators, and you get 4 rides in what's called a D model. So it's a 2-seat version of the F-16 with the instructor behind you. And your 5th ride is solo. And you either are ready for that ride or you're washed out of the program, right? Boyhood dream over. And I remember sitting in that cockpit of a $45 million fighter jet, and I'm looking around, and it's a little surreal. And you kind of look down at your legs and your boots, and you're like, dude, this is me, right? Manifesting my boyhood dream. And then the next thing hits you as you look around and you realize you don't know what half the buttons and the switches do in this deal, right? But we're not ready to kill people yet. They're just teaching us how to fly it. And so what the hell, kick the tires, light the fire, I go fly it, land. And I remember it was like 110 degrees that day in Phoenix. And when I rolled up the canopy, it actually felt like the cold air was hitting me. And those are the moments you realize just how insanely intense and focused you are. But more importantly than that, the lesson that hit me in that moment changed me for the rest of my life, Nick. And that is go before you're ready. And because I would have never gotten in that jet and flown it by myself. I was forced into that situation between fear and faith. And I went, and I've never stopped going. And that gift of being a fighter pilot, if there's anything that it's given me, it's just this, spirit that you can do anything and just go, man. It's going to be all right. God's got your six, and you're capable of way more than you think you are in this journey called life.
I love that. I admire how much you put your faith forward. You inspire me to do it more, and I've seen a lot of the results of that in your life, and certainly we have the same beliefs there. I admire how much you're willing to talk about them, even to your detriment, where there's certain shows that will not have you on, certain shows that we won't talk about them, but they might rhyme with Oprah or Ellen or something like that. But like, there's other shows that won't have you on because you're gonna talk about faith. So of course you are relegated. Not a bad place to Fox News, of course, because they don't mind faith, and so hopefully it's really interesting how a world of people with open minds are very afraid to have someone like you on to talk about faith. I mean, tell me a bit about how you deal with that.
So number one, and I don't care about whether people have me on or not. I was on Kelly Clarkson last week, so she's faith-based, and she is number one in daytime television now. So I think it just shows that people want this, right? They don't want faith censored out of their lives. But for me, very personal. And again, I'm ahead of our conversation, but I keep going back to the book.
Yep.
So one of the lines of effort, or LOEs, that I outline in my code of living in the book is faith forward. And I have made this totally linear connection in my life during times when I was really struggling, that the more you bring your faith with you, the more God will, bless you. And it sounds stupid. I mean, it's like, oh, that's so obvious. But if you look at yourself and you're like, how often do I really bring my faith with me? Right? Is it church? And for me, it's in every interaction I have. And I'll give you just a couple little examples. So I'm doing a thing on Fox News tomorrow, launching the book on Fox and Friends, and I missed the call. The producer, call her back, and she was like, oh my gosh, I love your voicemail. My voicemail is, hey, I'm sorry I missed you. I'm out living the day the Lord has made. Right? Easy way to share your faith. When people ask me how I am, I'm like, I'm blessed. And that stops people in their tracks at Starbucks, at Target,
right?
Wherever. It's just like, oh, but you can feel the connection of the Holy Spirit when there's two or more gathered in your name, and you bring God into that interaction, He is there. And then obviously, the bigger forums of life. And I've just, it's this beautiful thing to unlock, that if you desire more blessings and a closer relationship with the Lord, bring Him to your interactions. And it's just like I've unlocked this incredible code in my life. And you're exactly right. It wasn't overnight. It took time to have the courage to share your faith. And, I do it at Speaking with Washington Speakers Bureau. And that's my job, right? And I had to sit down with them and say, hey, this is what's on my heart. I'm going to share my faith. And they were like, well, there are going to be places that won't let you come and speak. And I still, on my feedback, there's 2 or 3% of the people that just chunk massive spears and like, how dare this guy bring his faith into Microsoft national meeting or whatever it is. But number one regret on people's deathbed is, I wish I had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life that others expected of me. And that's why I bring my faith.
Incredible. You made a comment there that, it sounds so simple. A mentor of mine years ago told me that, Nick, there's a big trap in life, and that's that everything in life that's easy to do is equally easy not to do. And so most of us go, oh, that's easy, and we don't do it. And so you leave this sort of trail of tears of these simple things that could make huge impacts incrementally in your life, but you leave them alone because they seem too simple. We need that, that $1 million fix. We can't just work out more and eat less. Right? It's just this. So everything easy to do is equally easy not to do. The book's called Flying to the Wind. It comes out this week. You must check it out. You also have flown 3 tours of duty in Iraq. At one point, when you're back home, tell us the Folds of Honor story. You're flying on a commercial flight now, and you see a man dressed in his dress uniform from the military. Tell us the brief 5-minute story on that.
Yeah, so another line of effort for the book, number 2, synchronicity. So chance with a purpose, Nick, is all around us, right? The challenge is, number 1, are you watching? Number 2, and more importantly probably, when you are inspired, do you have the courage and faith to take action in that moment? If you don't, it's these moments are meaningless. So in a game-changing moment of synchronicity for me, I'm on a commercial airline flight, headed from O'Hare to Grand Rapids. We land, it's about midnight. Captain comes over the PA as we're pulling up to the gate and announces that we have the remains of Corporal Brock Buckland on this flight who'd been killed in Iraq. And his identical twin brother, Corporal Brad Buckland, is in first class and has brought him the 7,000 miles home. Captain makes another request that everybody stay in their seats until Brock's remains have been removed from the right cargo hold, and certainly seen firsthand in combat that freedom isn't free, but I'd never seen this intimate side of war. And I watched that family on the darkest night of their lives, Brock's brothers, his parents, his wife, and his 4-year-old son. And the finality of the moment hits you in such a real way. As I mentioned, father of 5 kids, and tide of war turns on me. That's my wife and my kids sitting out on the tarmac, and so ceremony finishes itself up, and I grab my backpack and stand up, only to see that more than half the people have deboarded the plane. All right, nowhere to go except that blanket of freedom. We'll all sleep under tonight, courtesy of Corporal Brock Buckland and the 1 million veterans who have paid that ultimate sacrifice for our freedoms. And that moment of real despair, kind of just disappointment in this country, with all those people getting off the plane. I felt a hand on my shoulder, and the only thing I am certain of is it was a hand of God. He picks the least among us. And I certainly qualified there, but the willing. And so I went home, a few months later and started Folds of Honor. And our mission, unwavering from humble beginnings, was we'll honor the sacrifice by educating the legacy, providing scholarships to spouses and children who've had someone killed or disabled defending our freedoms. And 28,000 scholarships later, about 135 million out the door. He talked about we're doing God's work, and there's very few things in the Bible referenced with greater frequency than the command to take care of widows and orphans, and that is the ministry that Folds of Honor is.
Absolutely. I mean, our mutual friend John Rich said it very well in the Folds of Honor documentary. If you talk to any service member before they go out on an operation, and if it happens to be their last, and you say, is there anything I can do for you if you don't come back, they would all, without question, first thing they would say, take care of my family. That's like we know that's what they'd say. So amazing work there. Now, the other thing I think is really cool about this, I was interviewing the founder of a nonprofit called Mary's Meals, which I hadn't actually heard of until I was introduced to this guy a few months back. And his nonprofit feeds 1.6 million children a day. And I was mind blown. And then we also, though, when I hear your scholarship story, and there's a point to this, so everyone bear with me, $135 million in scholarships. So most of us are sitting here looking at what you've built over the past 13, 14 years, over a decade, just like, Magnus building Mary's Meals. And many people will go, they'll sit in the seat that you were sitting in on that airplane and feel really overwhelmed by where to even start. And I think the thing that I really want to get, the point I want to get across today, Magnus started Mary's Meals by seeing a report on the TV in Scotland having a beer with his brother after a day of salmon farming, and saw that there were people in other countries that there was civil unrest and they needed help. So he just said, you know what, I'm going to take a truckload of stuff to these people, and he took one, and then when he came back, the shed was full again. And he didn't decide sitting at a pub in Scotland that I am going to feed 1.6 million children a day. You, of course, started out, wanting to help, but the first step is just, how can I help? How can I serve? And I want anyone who's listening or watching, depending on what medium you're in, to not miss this point, because it can be really overwhelming, and even you can feel like you have imposter syndrome if I'm listening to what you've accomplished or what Magnus has accomplished. But it's that moment of synchronicity, that moment where you have that tweak in your stomach. You don't miss it. Do not miss it, or you might actually miss what God has, whether you believe or not. We know it's true. What God has for you in your life, and it's so much more than you could ever imagine. So I don't know. I just want to make sure people understand that you don't raise $135 million overnight. I mean, you do that by dedicating your life to serving others, which I know so many families I've personally met. Thank you for, but don't miss it because you're thinking too grandiose. Just start with who's in front of you that you can serve. Any other advice to add to that?
No, it's one of those things. Go before you're ready, right? And it's incremental. And so, yeah, I mean, and you said it very well. I mean, it's nothing happens overnight. The people that who have achieved what are perceived as great things, I promise there's been great struggle associated with it, and it is one day at a time. Just being here and being now and being the best on a daily basis. And I promise you and I will both wake up 10 years from this podcast and be like, what just happened to the last 10 years?
Yep.
And I think the beauty of the architecture and the way this book, Flying to the Wind, is engineered is you'll be able to answer that question. And it really is. I mean, I think as fighter pilots, probably the skill that we possess that's uniquely excellent to our world is our ability to take in copious amounts of information at high speeds, distill that information down and prioritize it. And the common denominator that has with the world we live in is everybody's drinking through the fire hose, right, man? There is not enough time in the day to take care of the things you do. We're overtasked, we're overscheduled, we're bombarded by communication. And at its core, Flying to the Wind is about prioritizing your non-negotiables in life and engineering a structure that ensures that you execute against the stuff that really matters on a day-to-day basis. And it's my code of living outlined in the book. I think it's an 80% solution for anybody. Yours is, Nick, is going to differ, and obviously a little different than mine. But there are core values to humanity that translate through the book, and it's just about little incremental progress that we make most days, and some days we're going to slip and fall back. But regardless if you're winning today or you're losing today, I don't think the way you live the day should change, and that's the cool part about this book. My day doesn't.
Love it. Flying to the Wind, you need to buy it. You need to check it out. Lots of great lessons. We're going to dig into even more. One of the things that I love when you and I were first talking, when I was interviewing you for the film we were making, this whole idea of flying into the wind, we sort of went right over that a little bit in the beginning. But, I've explained to so many people, not nearly as eloquently as you, because you've done it a lot. But look, we sort of desire, we think we desire these lives with no valleys, just peaks. But we then realize that in order to have the peaks, we literally must have the valleys. And as my friend Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, says, the point of life is not to get from here to the end with nothing bad happening. If you get there, you're like, oh, shoot, oh, wait. It's like, that's not the life, that's not a life well lived. And so the life life we want to live, and what the book inspires me to do, what you inspire me to do, is those days when, and we can talk about volition here because I've done my homework, and it's not just a line that Puma makes for you for golf. Volition, the decision, we can make the decision when everyone else would quit, when everyone else has quit, or that we can have more grit, or when everyone else would just say, that's too big for me to tackle. I don't know how I would possibly help a little boy whose dad was just killed in war. So I just love the end of the win thing. Anytime I'm up against something that just is kicking my butt, man, I just think of that like the only way the most amazing vessel on earth can take off, man-made vessel, is into the wind. So I don't know if you want to add anything to that, but I love that whole idea.
Yeah, and I think it's about harnessing that energy. And I've got this new show we talked a little about on Fox Nation where I sit down with some incredible, the accomplished individuals. And there are a couple main points I'd pull out of the show after spending a lot of time with these people. But the most successful people you meet are the absolute best at responding and navigating to stuff when it doesn't go their way. Period. That is their superhuman skill set. And embracing the energy of challenge and resistance in your life, not in a way of, that's too hard, I'm going to quit, but saying, hey, I'm going to harness this, and I understand that every day I live is going to be defined by what I do when things don't go my way.
Amen on so many levels to that. And I think we got to remember that this is it's mindset. Look, everything in life pretty much is mindset, and it's the only thing you can really affect day to day in yourself. It's mindset. I mean, I often think about how crazy it is that we so many times in life we think we're fully in control of this. Yet if we just stop to think, like, I got to hope that the power guy turns on the power in the morning. I got to hope that the guy on the other side of the road doesn't come into my lane. Like, life is a partnership with the rest of the world, and we got to be good players in the game. And so you just got to remember that there's the mindset that I choose to take. I got it from Tony Robbins, of course. Life happens for you, not to you. And so when you are dealt that blow, when you realize that that's been given to you for a reason, that inspires me a lot to go, okay, this was given to me, I better take it. The other thing I would add to this is it's a super simple, a bit cliche, but again, Jack Canfield, I'll say his name again because I love giving credit where it's due. I quote Colonel Dan a lot too, don't worry. But he said, look, it's a very simple Walt Disney quote. If you can dream it, you can do it. Most people go, oh, yeah, cool. I've seen people with dreams that have accomplished things. But one thing that I like for people to know is if there's something that if you have a dream and you put it off maybe for a week or a month or a year or 10 years or whatever, a couple things you need to know about this dream. This dream was literally given to you. And so the people around you, by the way, may not even understand it. And that's okay because you have to understand.
I guarantee they won't understand it.
Perfect.
Or give a crap.
Because it wasn't given to them. It was given to you. And that's something you need to hold very near and dear. You may need to gain new skill sets. You may need to get a new education. You may need to surround yourself with a completely different group of people. But if that dream was given to you, just like that Folds of Honor dream was given to you, I mean, imagine the waste in these thousands of families that have now made a new life for themselves if you would have just said, man, I'm busy, God, I can't take this on right now. I can't take this on.
Yeah.
So
I know we're all too busy.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
You can possibly fit that in my schedule.
No.
But that's where it comes back to prioritizing and acting when we're inspired in our lives and listening to what's in our heart more often than what is in our head.
Act when inspired, huge deal. Don't wait for the inspiration to run out or for other people to talk you out of the inspiration. Act when inspired. Love that. All right, so there's this pivotal moment that really helps outline some of these big moments in the book, and that is you have what I don't think there's any such thing as mistakes, just learning experiences, but you have this learning experience when you are flying sort of a regular mission back from Iraq and you make a mistake when you're coming to land. Tell us that story.
Yeah, well, actually, it was, it ended up being harmless, but I was a second from killing myself. and I was actually taken off and raised my gear a little early on the F-16, which you're like, well, how do you do that? Well, there's like 2 seconds window to raise your gear before you overspeed everything on the airplane. And so I was a second off my game, but I was complacent. I'd come back and I'd perform at the highest level in combat. My first mission back in Tulsa, just complacent, right? And the jet actually settled back down on the runway on its fuel tank, and just scraped the skin off of it. Another nanosecond, the fuel tank full of 370 gallons of jet fuel blows up underneath me, and I'm probably not on this podcast. But I come back, land. There's very little issue, but it was really the first time, and I say this with great humility, that I kind of stepped on it in front of a lot of people, right? And I was a fast burner, one of the best pilots out there, and this was a mistake in front of the bros, if you will, and but it was the trigger of kind of everything starting to come apart, and that lasted for the better part of 7, 8, 9 years in my life. And Folds was just getting started, and so there was huge challenge there. I woke up every day going bankrupt. We built a golf course here that's out my window called the Patriot, which is an amazing place and thriving now. But I was going to lose my house and everything I had for years on end. So this was a life storm that really took me from probably a pretty arrogant guy to more of a meek person. And meek is a misunderstood word, man. It is, patience under suffering as you define meek. It doesn't mean you're weak, right? It's being patient while you suffer. And I, slowly evolved into that. And as I said, it was very introspective. And that's where I journaled the book that would become Fly Into the Wind.
And that's a book that you need to check out. We actually had a question from someone in the live stream. I think I know the answer, but I'll let you answer to make sure it's right. Where can they get this book to support you and what you're doing?
Yeah, so they can visit danrooney.com and pick any place that sells books. So that's the best place, danrooney.com. Really cool Anthem video we just dropped there yesterday. But yeah, everybody that's selling books, from Sam's to Walmart to Amazon to all of those normal book folks, and you get it in the audio version too. I read it, so it sounds like a guy from Oklahoma talking really slow, so it's a good listen.
I love it, love that. All right, so the framework of the book is your personal code of living. So you've got these acronyms. You've got CAVU and you've got LOEs. We sort of talked a little bit about lines of effort. And so explain CAVU to us and help us learn how we can use that in our life.
So super powerful personal acronym to me that I stole from the fighter pilot world. It stands for Ceiling Invisibility Unlimited. So again, looking out my window, we got a CAVU day. It's that perfect steel blue sky. And these are, these days that, you can fly a fighter in an unlimited way. And those are the days that you crave and you desire. And so my life metaphorically was, a dark, crummy, dark place a lot of this time. And so I was like, well, how can I engineer CAVU in my life? And when on a daily basis, I knew I was going to wake up and face a lot of headwinds, a lot of challenges in my life. And as you mentioned too earlier, I mean, life is out of our control, right? The outcome really is out of our control. And so I started building my code of living. I was like, well, what am I in control of today? How can I take this negative energy, bottle it up, and turn it into something positive, and use this as motivation to become, a better person in all the areas that I'm in control of. And that is at the essence, how I engineered my personal code of living that I call CAVU.
Love that. All right, and so let's run through. We've already run through a few of these lines of effort, and we'll explain what a line of effort is. I mean, what does that really mean? Yeah,
so it's cool. So we call them LOEs, but it's a military term when we're going to battle, right? So if we're going to, and battle in Iraq, we've got lines of effort, right? Fighter jets are bringing a line of effort. We've got, C-130s. We've got, Marine Quick Reaction Force. These are all lines of effort that are coming together to, force multiply and bring, the most pain and suffering to our enemy. But it's a line of effort. It's how things come together in a meaningful way, and it's all coordinated. And I really think, I hate to use the word magic, but the magic in the book is how this thing stacks and how the lines of effort really come together in a way that's much more powerful than just one or two of them outlined by themselves.
Got it. And we've mentioned a couple of them already. We mentioned Synchronicity. I brought up Volition. You had an experience when you were in a sports psychology class. I remember you telling me that story. Share that and the word Volition and what it is.
Yeah, so it's fun. So the guy that taught me that sent me a text today, and he said, I got your book. He was like, beyond words, cool, the presentation. So that really made my heart feel good, and I was able to, throw a salute to Dr. Cook. But I'm a junior at the University of Kansas. I walk into this class. Professor shows up 5 minutes late, walks up to the board, writes this word, volition, and proceeds to tell the class that it's the most powerful word in the world. This is the power of choice. And every day we're free to choose. He said, but understand the opportunity and the consequences that come with those choices, because they will culminate to write the legacy of your life. And he said, every choice you make follows a logical progression. And it starts with, I won't do that. I can't do that. I'd like to. I'll try. I can. I will. He said, if you can make it to I will, nothing can stop you. And it was that moment of synchronicity that brought me together with Dr. David Cook at the University of Kansas, that he, again, changed my life with this just unlimited potential of our choices and opportunities they represent in our lives. And I made the choice right then and there that I was going to go be a fighter pilot. And it became crystal clear in that moment. And volition, really, as it relates to my code of living, that's kind of the big lever that starts to turn people's life, right? I'm going to outline a bunch of places where you can make positive choices and prioritize what matters most in your life as the book goes on. But at the end of the day, you're either going to choose I will, or I can't, or I won't, or I'll try. All these excuses that prevent us from getting to where we need to get to, hopefully in our hearts and our minds.
Yeah, and tell us about the line of golf stuff that's out there, the Volition line. That's cool stuff too. Amazing stuff.
Again, it's like go before you're ready. I had no idea what I was doing. But other than my military flight suit, I could never walk in my closet and put something on that I called the uniform of life, that like represented who I was. And so I came up with this concept of Volition America that would give back to Folds of Honor and really be a uniform for life and give you that edge to go out and make a positive choice in your life, and hopefully make Volition a household name too, because it just is a life force unlike any other. And so Puma makes Volition America. It benefits Folds of Honor. And 2 years ago, one of my dear brothers in Christ, Gary Woodland, wins the U.S. Open wearing Volition America, fellow University of Kansas grad, on the biggest stage in golf. And you're just sitting there thinking, oh my gosh, so this is one of my best friends. He's winning the U.S. Open, and he's wearing this, clothing that I chicken scratched out on a napkin. And it's just so cool. I mean, it's like golf meets fighter pilots, kind of our Imagineering, if we will, and we go to design it every year. But yeah, it's really cool stuff, and you can get that. There's information in the book about that, but that's volitionamerica.com. If you want to check out the uniform for life and support Folds, a great place to do it.
Is that that fresh piece of clothing you're wearing there? Is that also Volition?
No, man, I'm out of uniform. That's terrible, isn't it?
No, I like that. I'm just wondering where I can get me one of those.
This is Patriot gear
right
here. No, I'm sorry.
No, hey, I just want to know where I can get it. But the Patriot Golf Course is also amazing, also a supporter of Folds of Honor. So I just know I need that shirt. So now I know where to find it. I know who to bother. All right, good. All right, we're moving on. You have another concept of eliminating parasitic drag. That's just an interesting concept. Explain that to us. This is another LOE from the book.
one of my favorites, really. And this book, I mean, it's like a journey more than a read. This thing's not a page turner because it's going to take you time, because it requires that you be very honest with yourself, and this chapter especially, right? I think it's October 14th, 1947, Chuck Yeager broke the sound barrier, right? Flew faster than the speed of sound. But they had been unsuccessful for a very long time until they actually eliminated parasitic drag off the trailing edge of the Bell X-1, was the aircraft he was piloting. And the concept of this chapter is, man, in order to live your fullest life, in order to ascend to the heights that God wants you to, you have to eliminate the stuff that's holding you back, right? The parasitic drag, as it translates to our life. And, during my, life storm, I just started picking stuff off, right? I was like, this is not a healthy thing I do. This is not contributing to where I want to get to. And parasitic drag comes in a lot of different ways. I had somebody call me the other day that opened up the book and they were like, oh my gosh, I opened to the chapter of parasitic drag, and the first type of drag in our life is resentment toward others, not forgiving other people. And this lady was like, hey, I never forgave my dad for divorcing my mom. I mean, he's 81, and it just hit me like a ton of bricks that I've got to have this conversation, because not forgiving somebody is like, and I use the analogy in the book, it's like grabbing a hot coal to throw at somebody else, right? That is not going to translate well. But you are the one getting burned when you have this. And, it comes in the form of alcohol, social media, shopping, your weight, eating, unhealthy relationships in our life, these people that are around us, you've never been able to just be like, you know what? You are not good for me. But if you are dragging around all this crap that is ultimately holding you down, you will never fly. And so this is a very intentional part of the book. And the last part on this is the science behind parasitic drag is super powerful. And it's called remove and replace. And this is not mine, stole it. But the way the human brain works is you can't just say, okay, I'm going to stop drinking 7 nights a week, right? Say, I'm going to stop drinking 7 nights a week, and at 5:30, when I have the craving for my glass of red wine or 2 or 3, I am going to replace it with a walk with my dog, or getting on my Peloton, or sitting down and playing cards with my wife. You have got to replace whatever you move, and you can literally reprogram the bricks of your life when you do this. And it's an awesome force, but I love this line of effort.
Yeah, I love that too. I love the idea that most people essentially try to create a vacuum. They try to say, "Oh, I'm just remove this from my life," and they don't take the chance or the time. They don't probably understand you have to actually replace it with something else, or you're not going to be successful. So I think it's a really key distinction there. I dig that. Service before self. We talked a little bit about this. To me, every opportunity that I've ever gotten that's been amazing has been based on one very simple thing, which is just serving someone else, just serving the people who are in front of me, wherever that might be or whatever context it might be. But in the book, one of your LOEs is service before self. You've obviously done that with Folds of Honor. You've done it in a bunch of different ways. But what else do we need to know about service before self?
Well, I would, so it's one of the 3 pillars of the United States Air Force. So service before self, excellence in all we do, integrity first. And, I think as a general rule in life, the less time you're focused on yourself, the more fulfilled and happier you're going to be. And I'm going to play moderator here, Nick, because, your story is so powerful and you live it. And you've unlocked this beautiful irony of, when you're helping someone, you're actually the one being helped. And when you came to me to make the Folds of Honor story and the incredible storytelling that you have done putting others before yourself as the guy behind the camera. How does that feel to you? I'm asking you a question.
I'll take any question I can get. It's amazing. I mean, I find that most people, like, I've led a bunch of group events over the years, and I'll typically get someone, man, woman, goes up at the front of the room and they say, I got to make some changes. I'm just not happy because I'm not doing this and I'm not doing this and this is, and there's only one. The biggest problem they have is they just let everyone else know their problem, because every sentence they said started with I. They're being completely self-centered, and the only way to get out of that funk is to stop putting the focus on you, because no one else is. Like, just focus on other people and someone else. So I love it. I feel so blessed every single day to be able to, I mean, I make a living of being able to just to be able to help other people. And not only that, I get to have great conversations. I get to learn, like, every one of my, actually, it took me way too long because I'm not that smart, but about 10 years ago, I realized that every day what I was doing, I was getting the best self-help class available. Like, I mean, I've interviewed Tony Robbins 4 times, interviewed guys like you, I interviewed John Riches. I get the people who have really achieved, and they distilled what took them 50 to 60 years to learn. They distill down into like a nice 30 to 45 minute conversation with me. And I realized, like, oh, wait a minute, if, for me to continue to have a great relationship with my family, my friends, my wife, I need to make sure that they're keeping up. Like, I need to actually intentionally make sure that they're getting enough inputs of personal development as well, or else it would be easy for me to sort of go off, because I'm learning so much. So I love it, man. It's so much fun to be able to, like, it is. I mean, they always say the giver gets the most, and it's so true. I don't think you can do it with that intent, but which none of us do. But it is amazing what happens when I help you. I met a ton of great people. I mean, you helped me. I've known Lee Bryce through friends for years. You helped me get my first big country music cut with Lee, and we had a blast making a movie that will raise tons of awareness and millions of dollars for Folds of Honor. It's like, I mean, I'm glad. I pinch myself every day, man.
There you go. You answered that question way better than I did, but we're so blessed because we've unlocked this universal truth that I think, God ultimately created us to serve one another. And in this, Facebook world, you're looking at, well, why do they have more friends than me? And why didn't I get this like? And why did I do that? I mean, like, if you really look at, the times that you are myopic, those are generally the times you're least fulfilled in your life. And ultimately, I think, when we talk about this book, it's about fulfillment. And I spell it F-U-L-L, full. It's like, what are you putting in yourself? And it's that simple. If you're serving others, you're putting God in your life, you're putting the relationships that matter in your life, you're taking care of yourself physically every day, and you're going before you're ready. These are things that fill us up. And if you wake up tomorrow and you're like, man, I'm not very happy, and you drank 6 beers and you ate a half a bucket of fried chicken, and you binge watched on Netflix while you're trolling your social media, and you wake up the next day and you're depressed, well, guess what? Not surprised. You have not fulfilled yourself, not set yourself up for success.
That is, that's going to cut some people like a knife. I think in a lot of ways our calibration is off in a lot of these things, and it's not your fault. I'll put it there. Like, we have all, if you're listening to this and you feel like you're a bit off kilter, I mean, we have been very well manipulated by many forces to get that dopamine hit for that like or that share or that whatever. And I mean, look, your organization is a machine on social media and new media, which is a necessary evil in so many parts of this world. But one of my favorite things I heard recently was the many great performers and comedians, and I'm going to bring this back around. We'll see if I can land this plane, because I haven't connected these two before. But many great performers and comedians, you meet them off stage, and they're not who you thought they were. They aren't like the person on camera. They aren't like the person on stage. And a lot of times it is because they actually separate the personality that gets them paid and their own real persona, because if they connect the two, it can be too hard when people are actually trying to destroy you. They're destroying your own self-worth as opposed to this character I've created. And so, in many ways, when we look at this whole deal, we live in a world where it's difficult to separate your self-worth from your accomplishment, your achievement, your likes, your hearts, your shares. And so you do have to find something bigger and more grounded to hang on to. And I'd just tell you, if you feel like maybe just reconsider things, if you feel like if that tweaked you a bit and you feel like your self-worth might be a little bit too wrapped up in those things. And don't get me wrong, we all if I post something, I want to know if people like it or if they've shared it or whatever. I do, but let's try to keep that in a healthy context. And I think so many, kids and adults have lost all calibration there. I would also say secondarily, there are things, the beauty of like the content that I'm blessed to be able to make, and that there's other people doing things as well. Like there's some amazing content that can actually inspire you to go to the next level. So, go to Amazon and watch Folds of Honor or watch a movie like Rudy. I got his jersey right here behind me. There are some pieces of content when we put the good things out in the world that are going to serve others before ourselves. So service for self. There are media formats, there's podcasts, there's books you can read like yours, Dan, Fly Into the Wind. You have to be careful with your filter of what you allow into your life. I can't tell you how many times I've seen, I know there's been studies on this, but literally if someone has on something in my house, like has a TV on and it flips over to a show or something that is just, I am so careful about it that I can tell a toxic show in about 8 seconds. I'm sure you can too. But like if like the Real Housewives or something comes on or something like that, like Dance Moms, I'm like, get that out of my house. Like it is literally built on toxicity and I want nothing to do with it.
Fulfillment.
Right.
What are you filling yourself up with?
That is the very poignant way to put a period on that. We'll leave that there. All right, faith forward. We talked about a lot. You lead with faith. You invite God to lead every step of your life is how I would articulate it. And I think, for those of you who don't have faith, we're not mad at you. Just know that the faith we share is about love. And so if either of us can do anything to love you better, reach out, because that's truly what it's about. Dan, you've become more comfortable sharing your faith outside of the normal bounds. You talked about it, TV, speaking engagements, anything else. You mentioned you pray 30 minutes before every day. That's great. Obviously, I know you're a man in the Word. Anything that you might want to say to someone out there who has enjoyed the conversation but doesn't quite know where their faith is?
Yeah, I would say you got to be still, right? And the lens, and I was talking about this about Urban Meyer 2 days ago. He called me on something, and talking about my lens of life. And I wake up every morning and I'm at a place where I've distilled life down to one thing. And that is this glorifying God today? Is my schedule glorifying God today? Am I a vessel of impact? And I'm not saying you can't have me time and you can't go do those things, but when I look at things at the lens of, should I be doing this today? Should I be doing this now? Is this something God would want me to do? And, being a vessel of impact. And I don't think you've got to be a Christian or, you can be a Buddhist, you can be whatever you want. But I think humanity, and I've touched on this before, is we're built to serve others, right? And I think it's it's such a huge part of my life. And I would say, you open the Bible 5 minutes a day and see how that transforms your life. Just that intentional act will open you up to an awesome spirit. So keep putting that faith foot forward. And, I know God is real. I see his presence every day. And hopefully that testimony helps.
Awesome. Love it. And don't knock it till you've read it, right? When it comes to the Bible, don't knock it till you've read it.
Yeah, only the best book ever written, right?
Yeah.
Most people haven't read it.
One of the things that
Old Testament's hard. I get it.
It is. There's a lot of begats there that could get you off course quickly. But the thing that I think that it took for me, and again, I'm not that smart, but it took me to realize that the Bible, it's so overwhelming because it's so big. But once I realized there's never going to be more, it was sort of like palpable. Like, oh, wait a minute, there's not going to be a part 2. Like, I don't have to rush through this one to get to the next one. I just really got to try to understand this one. So again, not that smart. Maybe it'll help someone on the line. All right, last story I want you to give. You got to buy the book Fly Into the Wind to get all of these LOEs. You got a story about Go Before You're Ready where you were trying to connect with Budweiser. You're trying to see would Budweiser, you knew in your heart, you had a dream, Colonel Dan, that Budweiser would be an amazing supporter of Folds of Honor. And I love the tenacity and the reckless abandon with which you went after this. So share that story a little bit.
Yeah, so it's me alone above my garage. I just started Folds of Honor. I love their Super Bowl commercials. And so I fly to St. Louis, and I cold call Budweiser at the brewery. No appointment, no nothing. Fly on Southwest Airlines, which is now a great Folds supporter, ironically, as well. And my first meeting there, they're like, who are you? Why are you here? And I explain it, and they were super nice, right? But they were like, hey, man, you got to understand, we get 100 requests a day from charities wanting support from Anheuser-Busch, and no offense, they're not run above somebody's garage. So good luck. We don't want to see you back here again. And I touched on this earlier, but the other lesson out of this thing before you're ready also is, man, our lives are defined by what we do when it doesn't go our way. I mean, I just got kicked in the junk. Right? Not the answer I wanted. So easy to be like, oh, they're right. This is just stupid. It'll never happen. It'll never work. But I, resolved myself. The beatings will continue till morale improves. Good Air Force methodology. And I go back every 6 months for the next 3 years. And finally get a meeting with David Peacock, who was the CEO at the time. And I share my story. I'll never forget what he said. He was like, I know you've been coming around here. I heard about you. And he was like, but I didn't know. And in that moment, the Holy Spirit connected us. And he stands up and he said, I make it a best practice in my life not to get in the way of God's will. We'll figure out something to do with Folds of Honor. And that day has, sparked an 8-year relationship we've had. They've donated over $19 million to Folds of Honor. We've got our Budweiser puts the Folds of Honor logo on their beer during the summer, and these extraordinary things have happened. And, the lesson is, we wind up here and you pull away, man, is don't limit the art of the possible in your own life. Just get out in the universe. And if you're on the right path, if you're on God's intended path, there is a jet stream that will come behind you. And I promise it's not going to come as quick as you think it should. Everything takes longer, right? God's timing, our timing. But that's a beautiful, real-life parable of going before you're ready, understanding that we're defined by what we do when stuff doesn't go our way, and think of all the lives we've changed and get to do it by drinking a cold Budweiser. That is pretty darn good.
I love it. And then one more kicker to that story, which you'll learn in the book Fly Into the Wind. You actually missed the plane, and there was no more flights to get you there, so you chartered a plane to get there. Like, my favorite thing is so many people would give up, like, there's no way now. You just risk your own money, charter a plane to go. And sometimes to achieve greatness, that's truly what it takes. If you don't have the reward you desire in life, it's because you haven't taken enough risk. They are absolutely parallel. So
100%, man. God rewards those courageous souls, and that is true faith. True faith. And he sees it, and he recognizes, like, this is a man of faith and conspires for them.
I love it. I'm going to leave you with one quote from a smart guy, Lieutenant Colonel Dan Rooney. He says, failure is not an ending. Our lives are defined by what we do when things don't go our way. You can learn more by reading his book, Fly Into the Wind. And thank you so much for tuning in to Now to Next. Colonel Dan, thank you so much for joining me. It's always a pleasure to see you.
Nick, you're a great patriot. God bless you.
Thanks, brother. Take care. Hey, Nick Nanton here, and thanks for tuning in to Now to Next. I want to make sure you don't miss a single episode of this show on YouTube. So before we continue, be sure to subscribe to our channel and ring the bell to get notified about our latest videos. You have the option to be notified for occasional videos or all of them. If you're on your phone, just go into your settings and switch on notifications. Thanks for watching.